Hello, welcome back to Hunter Tuned. In today's video, we're going to be showing you some parts that I'm going to be installing onto this Honda Civic sedan with a B16 engine, and we're going to be turbocharging it as cheap as possible with the parts that will get us to a goal of 400 horsepower to the wheels. And that's my goal with this car, just as a number to shoot for. It's a stock B16, and we're going to be turbocharging it with parts from eBay and Amazon. And in this video, I'm going to kind of show you guys some of the parts I have here already. I still have some more stuff on the way, but I'm getting a head start on things, and I'm going to do some preventative maintenance things that aren't necessarily needed to do this, but I'm going to do them anyway and see how the parts are. So on the table here, I have a bunch of parts from eBay and Amazon that I'm going to show you guys that we're going to be installing on this B16 car. So to start, to do a turbocharge, we need an exhaust manifold to put the turbo on. Now this manifold is a B series top mount with a T3 flange on the top and a 44 millimeter wastegate on the side. I bought a couple of these back in the day, and I still have a couple of them here actually sitting at my storage unit that I was thinking about throwing up on the website for pretty cheap if you guys wanted to pick one up for yourself. But you can actually find these on eBay now for, I think I've seen them as cheap as like 99 bucks. And it's a top mount with pretty thick runners. If you guys have turboed stuff in the past, you know that eBay manifolds have always been notoriously known for having really thin material, and they crack all the time. But this one is not. And I'm gonna show a picture of the listing for a lot of these parts. I'm gonna talk about them and maybe throw in a screenshot of, you know, like the listing or whatever, and then you guys can search it for yourselves and pick one up if you want. Or, like I said, I might throw a couple on the website because I did buy 10 of them, and I paid 200 bucks a piece, which I think even $200 for these manifolds is a pretty good deal. And they come and go on eBay. Just like some of these parts, if I put links to them, sometimes they're not available all the time, and parts come and go on eBay. Like they'll run out of stock, so then they won't be available, and then you check in another week or two and then they're back in stock. So the link that I would share, I don't think would necessarily work on everything. And I think part of the reason that these manifolds are so cheap is because the turbos, a lot of turbos actually hit the runner on this side. So I dented this one in. I just took a torch to it and I smashed in the runner so I can fit my turbo that I'm going to run. This is a VS Racing journal bearing 3071, and you can get these turbos for around 350 bucks. And we could have obviously done cheaper with the turbo, but this stuff I have at the shop, or I have a couple of these or whatever from being a VS Racing dealer, and these are notoriously or a lot more reliable than like the $100 super glue 57 trim turbos that you guys can find. And for a goal of 400 horsepower, I definitely want to run a turbo that's going to last. So that's why I'm going with the VS Racing 3071 journal bearing. I've run these turbos on a lot of things in the past, and it's a perfect size for this stock B16 engine. Like I said, those cheaper 57 trim turbos are only like 100 or 150 bucks, but they don't last above 350 horsepower in my opinion. If you want a reliable turbo around that 400 horsepower mark, those 57 trim super glue turbos really aren't the best. And then to pair with the manifold, I also have one of my wastegates. It's a Hunter Tuned 44 millimeter. You can pick these up on eBay too. Not the Hunter Tuned ones, but you can pick up similar 44 millimeter wastegates. These ones are a little bit better quality than, like, you know, the $50 ones on eBay, but you could opt for a cheap one, and I've gotten lucky in the past with a lot of these cheap parts. So now that we have the turbo, the manifold, and the wastegate covered, also I did want to show you guys the AR. This is a T3 inlet with a 3-inch V-band outlet, and it's a 63 AR turbine housing. That's what we're going to use on this thing. And then I also have the V-band flange and clamp for it as well. Now we got to get oil in and out of the turbo, so we have a All-Star Performance adapter fitting to go from -3 to 1/8 inch NPT. So this fitting will go into the block or into the oil sandwich plate, and then the feed line will come off of this to go to the turbo. And the fitting that goes inside the turbo is this fitting I got from Fragola, or Fragola, whatever you call it. And it is a number 3 AN to 7/16 by 24 brake adapter fitting. So these turbos actually use a 7/16 by 24 flare style fitting. So this is the fitting that's going to go into the feed of the turbo, and we're going to run a 3 AN line for any journal bearing turbo. That's always a good rule of thumb. If it's journal bearing, I run 3 AN feed line, and if it's ball bearing, I run 4 with the restrictor that comes with the turbo. So if you order like a ball bearing version of any of the turbos that I sell, they come with the fitting that goes into the turbo for the feed line. And then another thing that I'm actually really excited about is this oil pan. So I also got this oil pan on eBay, pretty cheap, around 75 bucks or 80 something bucks, and it's like a Moroso knockoff oil pan. And this is way cleaner of an oil pan than the Moroso that I ran on my Blue Hatch. We put a Moroso 5.5 quart oil pan on that thing, and the inside of that oil pan did not look anywhere near as good as this one. And this is like half the price. So pretty cool, and it has our turbo drain already on it, so we don't have to weld or do anything weird to the oil pan. We can just bolt this guy on. So pretty excited to throw that on. I also got a timing belt here. This is like an evergreen. This is like the eBay Gates blue knockoff. So I've run these timing belts on quite a few engines in the past, and they work out really good. So we might throw this on. This is just preventative stuff though. It probably doesn't need a timing belt, but figure, you know, we're doing a build. And then also not 100% needed, but I did get the eBay head studs as well to see kind of how these things are. eBay B series head studs. We could throw in one at a time, and we could do that without having to pull the cylinder head off. And they came with actual ARP nuts and washers for those head studs. I also have a 4-bar Speed Factory map sensor here. Also not needed, but if you want to go above like 11 pounds of boost, you need to get a bigger map sensor, and I just go right for the 4-bar. They plug right in. They're like 100 bucks, and they are reliable. Like I said, this is stuff that I'm getting that I feel like is actually going to last. I'm not buying like the cheapest parts possible. I'm only buying the cheap stuff that works. Or that's what I'm trying to do. Yeah, and that oil pan also came with like instructions and stuff too, which, I don't know, kind of cool, I guess. And it came with like a magnetic drain plug too. So that oil pan honestly is like pretty good deal. I was actually pretty surprised that they started selling an oil pan like that for the B series. I wish a lot of these parts, like the cheap top mount turbo manifold and the cheap oil pan and stuff like that, I wish they did a lot more of these parts for single cams, but it doesn't seem like there's not as many manufacturers out there doing cheap parts for single cam stuff, which sucks. But I do plan on doing another build on the $800 Marketplace Civic with like same kind of style, cheap Amazon eBay build for a single cam. So you guys will have to stay tuned for that. And also subscribe if you want to see if this stuff is going to hold up or not over the long term, and watch me install it. So for the oil pan too, I opted to get the metal lined Felpro oil pan gasket. This is an oil pan gasket for the B series Honda that has a liner in it, so you can actually crank the bolts down tight. These oil pan gaskets are awesome, and you guys have seen me use these in the past, how to seal your B series oil pan for good. This is the way to do it with this gasket. I also did get a valve cover gasket off of eBay. I got 2 of them because the first one I bought didn't fit the B series. I don't know if it was for like an H or something, but it didn't fit. So this is a different eBay seller. These are like 10 bucks. They're cheaper than like the Felpro ones that you get at the parts store. But I also have a Felpro one here, but these are like a one-time use. The type of material they use on these Felpro valve cover gaskets they stretch after you torque them down. So, but if you want to go to the parts store, you can get one of those. Or order on eBay or Amazon. And along with like the head studs and stuff too, I got this water pump and tensioner that I may or may not use. I might save it for a different build that actually needs it. And then these are the spark plugs that you guys know that we run all the time. Yeah, there they are, BKR7E. We'll gap these down to like 18 thousandths before we throw them in. And these should be good for about 350 horsepower or so, fit 400-ish. Yeah, that's what we run. And normally I just run stock distributor stuff, but I might try out this Snake Tuning Solutions mini distributor kit. I've never ran one of these, but Armando sent this over, and I might give it a try. I don't even know how to plug it in or anything, or how it works, if I got to get like a coil harness or something like that, or if I got to get coils, but it looks like a really nice piece. Yeah, it looks like this just plugs into the coils, and then this piece here plugs into the mini distributor. So it looks like a pretty self-explanatory install. I would just have to get coils and like a plate to put here, which I don't have at the moment. So I might have to source something in order to run this. But in the time being, we'll probably just run the regular distributor and spark plug wires, and then we'll come to this at a later time and see how this thing works. But I just wanted to give Armando a shout out for sending this over for me to test out, that we will do in a future video. And I do have this B series valve cover that's already tapped for some 10AN plugs on it. You can vent the valve cover here and run it to a catch can, which I got from Evil Energy on Amazon. Comes with a 10AN hose, a bunch of fittings, stuff like that. Or you can opt to get the fittings that go into the block, which I sell on my website. The fittings, they go right into the block by the oil filter, and those come out to a 10AN, and you can run those to a catch can, or you can do both. All right, so there's the catch can and stuff. Also probably not exactly needed, but it's something we're gonna put on this car. And then we'll also need a wideband. So this is an AEM X series wideband. These are the only widebands that I like. A lot of the cheaper ones and stuff like that don't really give good readings, and the AEM X series has been proven to be really reliable for me. I run the X series in pretty much all my cars, besides like the all-wheel drive car that came with an Innovative when I bought it, but I'm probably going to swap it out for one of these guys. So we covered wideband, oil catch can, ignition stuff. Obviously we're going to need injectors and a fuel pump, so we can pick up like a Walbro 525, or we can get one of them like AEM 340s. Something like that will work just fine. And then I'm probably going to put, I don't have a set here at the moment, but I'll probably put a set of thousands in this car from huntertune.com with the top hats and lower hats, and then we'll probably do a separate video, maybe doing the fuel system on it. And then I have this laying around, so I might put this on here just to kind of keep some vibration out of the bottom of the engine. Once again, not needed, but you know, anytime we add horsepower, if we can kind of take some of that vibration out. Super damper from ATI is a good thing to, you know, put on there. And like I said, not needed. But if your crank pulley has like chips in it and stuff like that, I've noticed they tend to chew bearings a little bit easier. And I think the pulley on this is in pretty good shape. So we definitely could just run the pulley that's here, but like I said, I have that pulley, so I might put it on and put it to use instead of it just sitting around. And then to hold the gauges in an EK specifically, I always get these like $25, I don't know if Glow Shift makes them or whatever, but they sit right behind the cluster there, and you can put your wideband and boost gauge in it. Or what I like to run is wideband and oil pressure, because boost usually is stationary unless you're constantly screwing with it and you don't have a laptop. But I usually run these little gauge pods on eBay for the wideband and oil pressure. Those are the two most important in my opinion. Boost is a close third. And for the oil pressure, I also usually always buy the AEM X series oil pressure gauges. I know they're a little bit spendy, but they're like the most reliable in my opinion. Then I got an intercooler. This is just like a super cheap $180 kit or something like that from eBay. Comes with the piping and an HKS style blow-off valve. These blow-off valves sound, you know, controversial, but we're gonna run one of those. Otherwise we could get a piping kit and stuff on eBay, or a universal kit, and make our own and fab our own. And if we were doing that, I would probably opt to get a Hunter tuned 50mm blow-off valve. But you know, you can buy one of these kits too and then get an adapter, or get somebody to cut the flange off where the blow-off valve is and weld on the other one. But yeah, it comes with all the clamps, couplers, blow-off valve stuff, and then the piping. And I like these Civic kits because they're pretty simple. Boom. It's just like 4 pieces total, which is pretty nice. And sometimes you gotta cut and chop these to make them fit perfectly, and especially with a top mount, we actually might have to extend this guy a little bit, or get like a long coupler, or I'll probably just go get like some radiator hose or something to extend it. We'll see. All to come soon. And then this guy is actually a Clutch Max Stage 4 clutch. So this is like a pretty cheap clutch on Amazon. It's like 185 bucks, and it comes with a flywheel, pressure plate, and the clutch disc. Throw-up bearing, release bearing, and alignment tool. Now, I've ran Clutch Max before with good luck. I used to run the XTD stuff, but the XTD is a really hit and miss. And a lot of them either don't hold power, or they have weird clutch release issues, or just weird stuff like that. So I usually just buy competition clutches. But for this one, I'm like, oh, we'll experiment and we'll try this Clutch Max clutch out. So debating if I'm going to put this in right away or not, because the car does have an aftermarket clutch in it that grabs pretty good. So I might just leave the clutch that's in it for now, and then if it has issues, we'll run this Clutch Max Stage 4. But yeah, got a couple guys actually running like in the 10s with one of these clutches, so I think they're pretty good. And I ran one in my Miata build as well, and I never had any issues with it. So yeah, with all that being said, I'm going to, I actually swapped the coilovers as well in this car, and I swapped from the yellow Max Peating Rod coils to the blue ones. The cheap yellow $200 Max Peating Rod coilovers, and Max Peating Rod sent me over these T5 coils. I don't even know what these are, the T5s or the T7s. They're the blue ones. And I had a bunch of issues with these trying to install them on my Integra, but I figured, hey, these are also cheap. Maybe they're better than the $200 yellow ones. And I'll give you guys my opinion on that once I put them in. So we're gonna install these coils, those wheels, and I'm just gonna get to it. Figured I'd film it. Maybe you guys will like it, maybe you'll hate it. I don't know. And I just took it for a drive actually with those coils, and these coils seem a lot stiffer than those yellow ones. So that should be pretty good. I plan on ice racing this car with studded tires here in a couple weeks. So I'm hoping to get all this turbo stuff done and be able to take it out on the frozen lake to ice race, which should be a lot of fun. But yeah, with all that being said, I'm going to get the exhaust off, and I'm going to get that oil pan on right away, and then maybe do a little bit of test fitting with the manifold and stuff and see how stuff fits. But yeah, I just wanted to show you guys a lot of the parts and stuff that I'm going to be using, and all those screenshots that you guys saw of where to get the parts and stuff like that should help you guys out a little bit if you're turboing your B series. Alright guys, so I'm about to put the eBay oil pan on. One last look at this thing. Like I said, looks really nice, especially for the price. It sure beats having to drill and tap your oil pan. So, gonna throw this guy on. I already got the exhaust manifold unbolted and the oil pan off of the engine. Everything looks good. The pickup tube is nice and clean. There's no metal or anything weird in the oil pan, so we're gonna get this new oil pan on, and then I might check out the timing belt and stuff a little bit more once I get the car back down onto the ground. But yeah, and then also while we're back here doing an oil change in this oil pan, there is a T-fitting up here that you guys can kind of see, and it looks like it's leaking a little bit. You can kind of see there's a little bit of oil sitting up there, so I might take that T out and like RTV some of the fittings that are in there, because sometimes those pipe thread fittings either will come loose, or you know, the thread tape wasn't put on properly or whatever, and then they'll leak like this. So we're gonna take some of that off, and the car doesn't even have an oil pressure gauge installed, so I don't know if I don't know, I might just take that T off and then clean it up a little bit. But first I'm gonna get this pan put on. Got the surfaces all cleaned off, and I do a thin layer of gray RTV that comes with the gasket on both sides of the gasket, and then we'll just sandwich this thing up onto the engine and tighten it down. All right, guys, so the new oil pan is on. Cheap old eBay oil pan works and looks pretty good here. I have to take this front fitting out and get a conversion to go from pipe thread to 10AN, and we're going to use this port here on the front for the turbo drain. So the oil is going to drain back into the pan on the front here. So I still have to get that, but on the back, I did tighten up the drain plug, and I installed this rear plug, which is actually for like an oil temperature gauge. And I just put some RTV that came with the oil pan gasket on the threads of it, and then I tightened it in with a ratchet. So that's all good. Then I got new oil filter on, and I removed the 1/8 inch plug back here. That T that was on there, I took that out. And now I'm gonna put the 3AN fitting right into the block. I know you can run T's and stuff like that, or you can get a sandwich plate, but I'm not really concerned that this thing's low on oil pressure. And if I wanna put a gauge in it later, I'll put a sandwich plate on it or something. But for now, I'm just gonna put the 1/8 inch to 3AN line right into the block. And then I have a All-Star Performance 3AN hose on the way, with a straight on one end and a 90 on the other end. So that'll be here tomorrow so we can get the feed line ran up. But for now, we're gonna go back up top, and I'm gonna test fit like the turbo manifold and stuff, and then I might take this crank pulley off and see if I wanna run that ATI damper or not. All right, guys, back up top. I did get the turbo manifold just kind of loosely fit onto there, and then I just set this valve cover that I'm gonna use on the top of the engine here, just so I could take a look at the timing belt and stuff like that. So I wanted to update you guys on what issues I'm running into and what we're gonna have to do to figure them out or fix them. So catch can lines should be pretty easy. I plan on just putting the catch can over in that corner, and then I just got 2 plugs for the back of this cover. And yeah, so I'm gonna pull this off quick, and I'm gonna show you guys what this thing looks like under the valve cover. It's like the perfect amount of crusty. The oil wasn't extremely clean in this thing, but that means she's got a good coating of sludge on everything to help us make some good horsepower. The belt does look a little slimy, like it's maybe a little bit old. It's hard to tell. I'm still debating if I'm going to put a timing belt and stuff on this thing. I might just run it, or maybe just tension this one a little bit tighter and get a better look at it, but it seems like it probably should be fine for now. I also deleted the they had the power steering reservoir still in here, and they had the line running over the top of the valve cover and going into here and then looping back. So I did what they did, and I just took the line and I looped it right back to this line instead of going through the reservoir or whatever. A lot of guys do this so it keeps fluid inside the rack, because it's a power steering rack, and they deleted the power steering here. Obviously we wouldn't be able to run power steering on this setup, unfortunately. Actually, if you guys go back on my CRV build, the blue CRV that I did a setup that kept the power steering. But most of the time when you go turbocharger on a lot of these cars, keeping the air conditioning and power steering just, it's a headache. Plus, we want to make some good, reliable power here. So I got the turbo kind of resting on the manifold, and this is actually one of the manifolds that I did not dent. So I'm going to kind of show you guys. There's no dent on this manifold like the other one. I did put the one that I pre-dented on here, and I actually figured out a solution to get this clearance figured out. You guys can see that the compressor housing is actually hitting that runner right there. So I went on Amazon just now and I ordered a 1-inch T3 spacer, and that should raise the turbo enough so it'll sit higher and it actually won't hit that runner. So I think just putting a T3 spacer on there, it will clear and you won't have to dent the header. So it's going to be like a day or two before that comes in, and I'm waiting on my oil feed line to get here. But other than that, the only other thing too that's I'm brainstorming through stuff, kind of bolting all this together, is the wastegate clears the radiator perfectly, But to fit, because I'm going to put a full exhaust on this car, this wouldn't be an issue if we were just running an up pipe out the hood. But if I want to run a full exhaust on this thing, I'm going to try to show you as best as I can here with two hands and trying to hold a wastegate. It's going to be kind of tight to get a downpipe through there. And I might have to reference my CRV video, because I think I maybe put a slim fan on the radiator and maybe slid it to a different position just to, I think just getting rid of this big bulky cooling fan and putting a slim fan on is going to be what we need to do. And then I'll have to make a downpipe that has a pretty long section here and then a 90 going down, and then it'll wrap back around going that way. All that's going to have to be kind of custom made. I don't think they're going to make a downpipe that like would fit with this, but I got a MIG welder and some, you know, Fleet Farm 3-inch tractor pipe. So we should be able to make something work here. And then I have a 3-inch exhaust in one of my cars that I'm going to steal off of it to modify to fit this thing. So it'll have a full 3-inch exhaust street car. Should be pretty fun, honestly. And I don't really have any doubts that this manifold will hold up just fine. You know, famous last words, but I really think this manifold will be fine. It's really thick. I'm gonna get that spacer so we don't have to dent it, because I was worried after denting the header if it would cause any issues with you know, having that as a weak spot. But I did that same thing. I dented the header on my CRV build, which kept power steering. I did that same thing, dented it, and from what I know, that car still runs to this day. I don't really know, but I never had any issues with the manifold cracking on that, and it was kind of the same style as this. It was like $400 back then, and it seems like every year that goes by, these turbo manifolds are getting cheaper, but everything else is getting more expensive. So yeah, over the next day or two, I'm going to finish up, maybe do a timing belt and stuff. I'm not sure yet. I'm gonna get the valve cover and stuff bolted on, and then maybe start figuring out intercooler piping, finish up the oil lines once I get that spacer. And yeah, we should be trucking right along on this thing. Pretty excited, and I hope you guys are too. And hopefully this is going to be a fun little series. Maybe we'll tally up how much all this costs so far, and then yeah, or you guys can maybe tally it up. I don't know. So yeah, with that being said, thanks for watching this first part of this series, and we're going to keep trucking along with it, and I really hope you guys are here to stay. Hit the like button, subscribe, comment down below, and have a great night and a better tomorrow, guys. God bless.